Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good night to all of you. So, I, as a host, my name is Azimuddin Aiman Rashid bin Zakaria. Let me introduce you all of my friends. The first one is Danish.
Hi.
The second one is Afifa.
Hello.
The third one is Irina.
Hi.
Okay, the last one is Aina Nadia. Okay, let's get started. Yeah. Okay, first of all, have you ever won an argument but still felt wrong? Well, maybe that's because logic isn't just about sounding smart, it's about thinking better.
Okay, let's now we talk about state the goal. Okay, the thing is we need to understanding the logic and policy enable us to reason more efficiently. Alright, like like a critical loop plus a cross cultural comparison like Islamic versus Western philosophy. Well, maybe that's because logic is not about sounding smart, it's about thinking better. But we are here today to drive it into the world of logical reasoning, how it works, how it fails, and how different philosophies, Islamic and Western. So, whether you are a debate nerd, a casual thinker, or someone just trying not to lose another group chat agreement, this one for you.
Okay, so let's define logical reasoning. It's basically the process of thinking through something step by step so that whatever conclusion you reach actually makes sense. It means we're using facts, logic, and structure instead of just reacting based on feelings or jumping to random assumptions. For example, let's say that your friend goes, I failed my exam, so I must be dumb, right? But that's not logical reasoning. That's an emotional reaction. So a more logical way to look at it would be like, okay, I failed this paper. Maybe I didn't prepare well or I misunderstood this topic. That means I need to figure out what went wrong and improve next time. All right. See the difference? The logical reasoning help us break things down, avoid assuming the worst, and come to conclusions that's more helpful and grounded. But here's the thing, when we don't use logical reasoning, it's super easy to fall into traps called fallacies. These are like mental shortcuts or mistakes that sound smart but actually mess up your arguments. And trust me, we see them everywhere, especially online. Well, we'll explain some of the common sense, like commands one right after this.
Okay, let's talk about strange logical reasoning. The strange is it promote clarity and structure, and somehow it can useful in law, science, and debate. Okay, how about the weakness of logical reasoning?
All right. So now that we've got a grip on deductive and inductive reasoning, yeah, those pretty building blocks of logic, let's talk about where logic falls flat on its face, and that is its weakness. Because real talk, logic isn't always the superhero it's made it out to be. First up, rigidity. Logic plays by the rules, and that's cool until it isn't. Life doesn't always follow a perfect equation. Emotions, context, cultural nuance, logic kind of shrugs and says, not my problem. So yeah, in a heated argument or moral dilemma, pure logic might come off like that one guy at the party quoting Wikipedia, technically right, but missing the vibe. And here's the kicker. Garbage in, garbage out. That's right. Logic can look flawless on the surface, but if you feed it a bad premise, the conclusion might sound smart, but it's just polished nonsense, like this classic. All birds fly. Penguins are birds, so penguins fly. Textbook structure? Sure. It's a textbook structure for sure, but the first line, it's bogus. It's bullshit. And boom, you just use logic to spread a myth confidently. This happens all the time in debates, politics, and even marketing. It feels right, it sounds smart, but it's built on sense and BS. That's why critical thinking isn't just about being logical, it's about checking your facts, Reading the room and knowing the truth and clarify sometimes need more than a syllogism. Logic's powerful, but it's not foolproof. And when it's used without heart, without care, or worse, with an agenda, that's when it turns from tool to a weapon. So yeah, logic's a king, but even kings, yeah, and advisors don't let cold reasoning rule without wisdom. That's my opinion. That's my yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's all for logical reasoning. And next, we are going to explain what is a fallacy. Now, let's get spicy. Logical fallacies, they sound smart, they feel right, but they are total traps. Okay? Let's hit three, one of the most common ones. Strawman, ad hominem, and false dilemma. Let's get started.
All right. Storming happens when someone takes your original point, then twists it into something else, usually something extreme or silly, just to make it easier to argue against. It's like instead of debating what you say, they're arguing with a version of it that you never said. Let's say it's like Pipa say, I think we should reduce working hours to improve work-life balance. And then I know replies, oh, so you just want everyone to be lazy and not work at all? Like, no, bro, that's not what this, not what people means. She's talking about balance, not being lazy. But I know made it sounds like some over dramatic versions just so she can't attack it. That's the strawman. You're not actually replying to the real arguments. You're fighting a fake version of it. Like a scarecrow, something easy to knock down but not real. And honestly, we see this everywhere. Debates, social media, even casual arguments. It's super common. But once you realize it, it's kind of annoying, right? So that's the strawmans.
Okay, I think we talk about next one is ad hominem. Okay, if you like you attacking the person instead of the argument. Okay, you know macam you know like oh you think that should be lower? We not broke last year. Okay, we talking policy, not the credit score, something like that. Okay, let's know about the next one. I think about false dilemma. I think.
Yes, false dilemma. Yeah. Presenting two options as if they're the only ones. First line. Example, if Dina says, you're either with us or against us. And another line, nah, maybe I just don't like your plan. Okay, let's take a closer look at the one of slickest trick in the fallacy playbook. Yeah, aka the either or trap. This one's sneaky. It shows up in arguments like it owns the place, acting like there are only two possible choices in a situation when really there could be 10 or even 100. So, sound familiar? That's the false dilemma in action. It sets up a binary black or white, good or evil, win or lose, and completely ignores all the gray in between. It's dramatic, it's intense, and it's misleading. So, example, let's say someone says, if you don't support this specific education bill, then you don't care about your kids. Hold up. What? What? That's a false dilemma. You might care deeply about education, but think that particular bill is trash. There are more than two options here. Okay, think superhero movies. How often does a villain say something like, if the world won't bow to peace, it must be ruled through fear? Hmm. How about like diplomacy or therapy or anything else? Now, here's the thing. False dilemmas work emotionally. They fire up your loyalty, your fear, your sense of urgency. They feel like someone's cutting through the noise with clarity, but logically, they're weak sauce. Weak sauce. Why? Because they ignore complexity. They oversimplify the problem just to corner you into choosing a side. And that's not truth. It's manipulation with a megaphone. So next time someone tries to trap you with an either or ultimatum, pause and ask, are these the only options? Odds are the truth is chilling somewhere in the middle, waiting for you to find it. That's my explanation on false dilemma. So next,
For fallacies, well, because they're tapped into emotions, fear, pride, is tribalism, but they fail because then don't help other scrutiny and recognizing them. That's your first step to intellectual freedoms. And that's the game false. Strawman and hominem false dilemma, three are the slightest, trickiest fallacies out there. That sounds smart. They feel convincing and they definitely get people fired up. But here's the truth. These tactics are about finding the best answer. They are about winning arguments, fast and dirty. When someone was a straw man, they're not debating you. They're shadow boxing a version of you, argument you didn't even make. When they go at hominins, they are not questioning your points. They're just throwing shit at you and with false dilemma. They act like coins, tools when really it's a whole depth of choice. But you are not falling for it because now you've got the tools, you've got a spot to spin, see the true noise, and push the conversation that smarter, sharper, and way more honest. Policy are loud, but true is louder.
Okay, thank you for that. So, before we going into the conclusion, let's talk about the cross philosophical comparison. So, when we look at different philosophical traditions, we see some fascinating approaches to reasoning. So, let's go to talk about it.
Okay, okay. So in Western philosophy, especially when we talk about Aristotle, logical reasoning is very structured and technical. They're really big on using clear steps to reach a conclusion, something we call deductive and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is when you start with a general idea and apply it to a specific case. Like all humans need water. I am human, so I need water. It's like math. If the logic is solid, the conclusion has to be true. Then there is inductive reasoning, which is the opposite. You start with something specific and then make a general conclusions. Example, I saw 5 cats today and they were all fluffy. So maybe most cats are fluffy. This one's more flexible, but also more risky because it's based on patterns, not facts. Western logic focuses a lot on breaking things apart, analyzing them, and building agreements step by step. So it's very systematic, and honestly, we use this in everyday life without realizing it. Like when we compare phones, make choices, or even argue with our friends with facts, it's not just feelings, so it includes something else too, right? So that's the Western on philosophy. All right, thank you. I will next pass to the next person.
In contrast, for Islamic philosophy, integrate to the two, the reason is seen as a divine tool to understand and support revelation. For instance, Avicenna or Ibn Sina use Aristotelian logic to develop metaphysical arguments for God existence, making reason of a servant to faith rather than its challenges. For example, Al-Ghazali in coherence of the philosophers critic thinking like Avicenna or Ibn Sina for over relying on Greek rationalism, yet he doesn't reject logic. He direct it towards spiritual truth. Meanwhile, in the West, David Hume's radical skepticism about causality and the self-show reason revealing itself without anchoring in a faith. And and so I pass to the next.
So on a critical note, while both traditions prize logic, they diverge significantly on how they relate reason to faith. So on Western philosophy, right? Especially post-enlightenment, often separates faith from reason, treating them as distinct or even opposing forces. Think of Descartes, who grounded certainty in rational doubt rather than religious belief, or Kant, who confined faith to the nominal realm beyond pure reason. In contrast, Islamic philosophy integrates the two, reason as seen as a divine tool to understand and support revelation. For instance, Avicenna, and that is Ibn Sina, used Aristotelian logic to develop metaphysical arguments for God's existence, making reason a servant to faith rather than its challenger. So, for an example, Al-Ghazali's Incoherence of the Philosophers critiques thinkers like Avicenna for over-relying on Greek rationalism, yet he doesn't reject logic. He redirects it toward Sufi spiritual truth. Meanwhile, in the West, David Hume's radical skepticism about causality and self shows reason unraveling itself without anchoring in faith. So they both share weakness. Both systems, despite their brilliance, can lean too heavily on formal reasoning and underplay emotional or intuitive intelligence. This limits engagement with human experience in its fullness, such as the role of compassion in ethical judgment or intuitive certainty of spiritual experience. A person might logically justify ethical action, but without empathy, the outcome can feel cold or detached, something both traditions wrestle with in different ways.
Okay, thank you for that interesting discussion. So, when we look back onto current issues right now, let's think about AI ethics, right? So, Westerners usually go for fair, unbiased AI that sticks to the rules. It's all about programming morality for consistent results, but an Islamic view would focus on why behind the AI, its impact on people's lives and spiritual growth. It's all about whether the AI is just compassionate, not just efficient. Right? So we can see how both use logic differently for these new ethical problems. That's all. Let's go into the conclusion.
Okay, sorry. Organizing fallacy is the first step to better reasoning, whether you are exploring uh, Aristotle logic in the West or Ghazali critics in the East. Across both traditions, one true stand real understanding begin when you question not just what it say, but how it argued.
Okay, so as a final thought, we encourage all of you to start testing your reasoning in your daily lives. Pay attention to how arguments are constructed, whether you are watching a political ad, a movie, or just chatting with friends. Start spotting those logical traps, and you'll be well on your way to thinking better, not just sounding smart. Okay, that's all from us. Thanks for joining us tonight. Assalamualaikum and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.